Alexander, okay. McNabb, so, I mean, I've walked through those woods a bunch of times to get to Henderson Mill Road, so I looked I'm looking just to see if anything's on the ground or whatever. You know what I mean? And I took my flashlight. I took my phone. That was the only two things I had on me. Alexander, McNabb, so I walk through the woods, and I go straight through the woods. The very first cut. I walk all the way through. The only thing I seen in them woods was a pair of men's brown shoes. I mean, I ain't gonna say I didn't think nothing of it, but I was like, why would somebody leave their shoes? Because, you know, if that had anything to do with it, why would they leave their shoes? Alexander, McNabb, so I just stepped over them and kept going, and I was shining my light on both sides, which it was light outside, but a flashlight still helps to see stuff. You know what I mean? Alexander, McNabb. So anyway, I come out at Henderson Mill Road and I take a right. And there's a girl that lives down probably about a quarter of a mile named Sarah. I wasn't necessarily going to her house, but I walked that way. And when I came to her house, I stood in her driveway for a minute. And about that time, my baby's mother texted me and said, look, the police are here. You know what I mean? They want to know where you are. So I was like, okay, I'm coming. You know what I mean? So I started walking. Well, I didn't go back through the woods. I wanted to go a little bit farther up that way and cut through. So I went farther up, and I'm still looking the whole time, walking fast as hell. I cut through the church. I didn't see nothing. I cut through the church. I came out at the top of the church on 36. Alexander, McNabb. And I took a left, and I kept going. You know what I mean? And, I came to Pine Valley, and I went in, and I walked down the street, and her dad, my girl's dad, was standing there talking to the officer through the door. And when he seen me, he told the officer, well, that's the one you need to be talking to right there. That's the one you're looking for. Alexander, McNabb. So I didn't say nothing, you know. It made me mad, but I didn't say nothing. I mean, so the officer walked up on me, and he was talking to me, asking me what was going on. And then the next thing I know, I got 3 police in front of me, asking me questions, which is natural. Alexander, right, McNabb. I mean, I understand, so I tell them what's going on. I mean, there was parts at that time that I didn't remember, like the part about my dad texting. I didn't think about all that. You know what I mean? Alexander, okay, McNabb. Well, anyway, I ended up telling them, like, as I remembered. I told them. They ended up letting me go in the house, and me and my baby's mother just in there. Alexander, McNabb. I mean, I don't know how else to put it except for the fact that I feel like I don't even exist no more. Alexander, why is that? McNabb, because this is my baby. Alexander, McNabb, and she's gone, and I don't know where she's at, if I ever see her again. But I know I got to keep my head up because of my 2-year-old. I've got to. I can't fall to pieces, and I can't. Anyways, a whole bunch of back and forth talking with different officers and everything. And I mean, I showed a couple of people where she slept. Alexander, McNabb. And I mean, that's about it. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't really know what else to say. That's all that happened. Alexander, okay, let me ask you this. Is your dad in Tennessee? McNabb, I never heard from his mouth that he was on the way to Tennessee yesterday. Alexander, okay. McNabb, My baby's mother talked to him, and I recall him saying something about being stuck in traffic for like 3 hours, but I assumed he was coming from work. I didn't know. Well, she says he said that he was on the way to Tennessee, and then this morning, after all this happened, and she called my stepmom to let her know what was going on, and she says my stepmom told her that my dad was there with her. Alexander. Okay. McNabb. I don't know if she actually talked to him or what. I mean, Alexander. What kind of vehicle does he drive? McNabb. He drives a, I want to say, I'm not sure if it's a Chevy or a GMC. Either way, it's a 3500, I think. It's a dually. Alexander. Okay. McNabb. It's white. Alexander. McNabb. But this distinguishing characteristic of the truck, because I've been told he's supposedly been spotted, I don't believe it. I don't think my dad's anywhere down here. If he's supposed to be in Tennessee, if that's what he said, then he's there. Alexander. Okay. McNabb. Okay. My dad took care of me my whole life. He's been the only one that's ever done it. Alexander. McNabb. That man never raised a hand at me in a hurtful way, in a mean way. That man never did anything wrong to me. Alexander. Okay. McNabb, so, Alexander. What's the characteristic of the truck? McNabb. The characteristic of the truck is the right back fender. Alexander. McNabb. Where it humps over. Alexander. Right. McNabb. Over the wheel. Alexander. McNabb. It's got white tape going along where the fender was cracked. Alexander. Okay. McNabb. To keep it from getting worse. You know what I mean? I mean, it looks rigged. Alexander. McNabb. You know what I'm saying? Alexander. Sure. McNabb. So if you see a truck that looks like his, that's the only thing that I can tell you to distinguish it from any other truck that may look like it. Because when I was, Alexander, does it got like a ladder rack or anything? Or McNabb. No, sir, it does not. Alexander. Okay. McNabb. It has a trailer hitch on it. We pull a trailer for work, like a 20 to 24 or 27-foot trailer. Alexander. What kind of work do y'all do? McNabb. Gas lines. Alexander. Okay, natural gas type stuff? McNabb. Well, it's just a pipe. We don't have anything to do with the actual gas. Alexander. Right? McNabb. I cut and thread the black iron and he installs it in houses. Alexander. Okay. McNabb. Like little residential houses and stuff. Alexander. Okay. McNabb. And I will say, I did see a truck when I was cutting through the woods. I seen a truck that looked like his, I just noticed it. I don't know why. I guess I always notice trucks that looked like his anyway. But the only thing is that it had an extension ladder on the back, like coming up out of the bed. Alexander. McNabb. But it had to have been leaning on the tailgate. And that's another thing. Daddy's truck don't have a tailgate. Alexander. Okay. McNabb. There's no tailgate on the truck. He took that off like last year because it was messed up, It didn't really shut good. Alexander. What's his name? McNabb. Michael McNabb. Michael Anthony McNabb. I could pretty much guarantee you that if anybody thinks they spotted my dad, they're wrong. Alexander. Okay, and that's fine. I just, I'm not McNabb, my dad. Alexander. It probably doesn't have anything to do with anything, but McNabb. One of the officers, mentioned that he was spotted down here and that he, Alexander. Yeah, McNabb. I'm pretty sure it wasn't him. Alexander. Would your daddy take your child? McNabb. I mean, I don't know. My stepmom called my girl. I didn't even hear this conversation. She told me about it afterwards, but supposedly my stepmom asked her, can she get the baby for a month or 2 or 3 because she knows that Clarissa goes in there and picks her up. And, we don't want nothing bad to happen to the baby. Alexander. McNabb. My girl told her, no, I want my baby. I'm keeping my baby. Alexander. Okay. McNabb. And when she told me the story, I'm like, that's right. You did the right thing. I'm not giving my kid up to nobody. I work, I can take care of my kids. You know what I mean? I mean, I ain't got my eyes on them every single second of every day, but I'm good. And when she does pick her up like that, I always get her from her. She's never dropped her. Alexander, McNabb. She's never tossed her. Now, one time, like I think the first day that they came back from the in-laws' house, she picked her up and she was upside down. When she picked her up, she held her upside down and I grabbed her from her. And she didn't even start crying because I grabbed her so quick and I swallowed her and I rocked it. I rocked it? It, meaning the baby? Oh gosh. Alexander, right, McNabb. And she didn't even start crying. She was okay. You know what I mean? Alexander, McNabb. And anyway, my stepmom was asking, could she have my kid? I mean, her reason was to keep her safe from my 2-year-old, which that don't make no sense to me. I don't understand why you would go to the drastic thought of, well, let me see if they'll let me have her for a few months. That's a newborn baby. Alexander, McNabb. You don't take a newborn from their mother. Alexander, McNabb. I mean, maybe the dad, that's different, but not the mom. That's a whole other ballgame. You don't take nobody from their mom. And the reason why I feel so strongly about that is because I don't have a mom. My mom don't have nothing to do with me. Alexander, McNabb. So my dad wouldn't do that. And I don't think she would do that. I don't think they would, either one of them would come down here and take my kid in the middle of the night. Alexander, McNabb. Or in the morning or whatever. You know what I mean? Alexander, McNabb. Because it wasn't even middle of the night. Because I seen her last at 9:30 when my dad texted. And everything was good. So no, I don't think that either one of them came and took my kid. Alexander, okay. Where are they living? McNabb. My dad has a place in Deer Lodge, Tennessee. That's where my stepmom lives. Alexander, okay. McNabb, my dad lives there too. But really, he lives in Bear Creek Marina in a camper. Alexander, okay. McNabb, because of the work we do, it's not up there. It's down here. So he stays in the camper on Bear Creek Marina. Alexander, do you know a phone number for your dad? McNabb, yes. Reads the phone number. Alexander, okay. Who else would come? Off the top of your head, Christopher, who would come? You know what? I've got to get out of this chair. This chair is too wobbly for me. McNabb, I can answer your question. If you want to go ahead and answer it or ask it, you can. But I know what you're going to ask. Alexander, what am I going to ask? McNabb, you're going to ask me who else would possibly have any kind of motive to come get my kid. Alexander, yeah, you're absolutely right. I was going to ask that. McNabb, well, like I told the officer earlier, even though I don't think this person would go that far, there's this dude named Matt Lester. Alexander, Matt, McNabb, Lester. Alexander, Lester, okay. McNabb, he broke in my house like 2.5 months ago. I didn't know it was him at the time. It took me a while to figure it out. Well, somebody told me he was running around bragging about it. Alexander, okay. McNabb, so he's supposed to be my friend. Well, he was in my house at the time. This day, he's at my house. He's in my house sitting in that burgundy leather chair. Alexander, okay. McNabb, and I asked him about it. I said, dude, you break in my house, man? Do you try to get in my house? Do you break in my house? That man started foaming and stumbling and stuttering, man, and I just knew it. I beat the hell out of that dude. I ain't going to lie. Alexander, okay. McNabb, Mr. Alexander, I beat the hell out of him, and I pushed him down my back porch. I pushed him down the back stairs. Well, evidently, he was, okay, because he walked off. Oh, my goodness. Alexander, so he didn't die or nothing. McNabb, he didn't die. Alexander, yeah. McNabb, I don't even think he went to the hospital. Alexander, all right. McNabb, but he's running around saying stuff. people had been indirectly hearing from other people that he's been talking about he's going to get me sooner or later. He's going to get me is what he's been saying. Alexander, okay. Now this little fight would have happened before the baby was even born, right? McNabb, yeah, way before that. Alexander, okay. McNabb, so I mean, do I think that dude broke in, came in my back door and got my kid? No, I don't. Alexander, what does he look like? McNabb, a snake. Excuse me, y'all. A snake. Alexander, okay, I need a little bit. McNabb, I mean, his eyes are kind of close together. He's got short, like, dark hair. Alexander, McNabb, I'm pretty sure he's clean shaved. If not, he may have a little bit of a goatee. He's probably 6 foot, maybe 6'1". He probably don't weigh no more than 180. Alexander, all right. McNabb, I mean, not much bigger than me. Alexander, where does he live? McNabb, I don't know. That man said he looks like, what does he look like? A snake. I don't know. He was living in Meadowbrook, but he was staying there with some lady. I don't know. He was living in Meadowbrook, but he was staying with some lady. Alexander, McNabb, and supposedly Matt slapped her, so she kicked him out. Alexander, okay. McNabb, I don't really know too much details on that. But he's not there now because I was just over the other day and he wasn't living there. Alexander, okay. McNabb, so I don't know where he's at. I think he's one of those dudes that just stays where he can, when he can. I think he's one of those dudes that just stays where he can, when he can. Alexander, what would he do with a 15-day-old baby? McNabb, beats me. Oh my goodness. Alexander, does he even know the child is born? McNabb, I don't know. I mean, it wasn't no secret that the baby was coming. Alexander, yeah. McNabb, I mean, it was, Alexander, he's not been running around with Cortney, has he? McNabb, no. Alexander, okay. McNabb, definitely not. She's never cheated on me. I know that for a fact. Alexander, okay. McNabb, I'm just Alexander, and I've got to ask these questions. I'm not McNabb, yes, sir. Alexander, pointing fingers or anything. McNabb, yes, sir. Alexander. So we probably can rule him out unless you think. McNabb, I would. I mean, the question was asked on who would have any kind of ill will towards me to do something like this. Alexander, McNabb, I don't think he would do something like this, but he's the only one that could possibly feel any kind of hatred towards me as far as like something that strong. Alexander, because you whooped his ass? McNabb, I mean, I beat the hell out of him. I've seen pictures of the dude after it happened. He was messed up. Alexander, okay. McNabb, I mean, Alexander. So the likelihood of him coming back to get another ass whooping is pretty slim, wouldn't you think? McNabb, I don't know. He's been running around talking about he's going to get me. I mean, I heard he was going to get me with a baseball bat. I heard, Alexander, he probably wouldn't do it this way. He probably wouldn't take your 15-day-old child because that's just more of a hassle for him. McNabb, all I know him is as a thief. Alexander, yeah. McNabb, what's been said to me since it happened was that he ain't doing nothing but going around and breaking in people's shit and stealing generators, PlayStations, Xbox, whatever he can get his hands on, he steals it. I mean, I ain't never had no kind of thought that he would ever try to kidnap my kid, but I can't say if he did or didn't. I don't know. Alexander, well, we'll check it. We'll check into it. Let me ask you this, Christopher. What was Caliyah? What did she have on when you saw her last? McNabb, she had a purple, my girl calls them onesies.